Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. The scarf covers everything but her eyes. For 3 years, Sarah has wrapped the fabric around her face before stepping outside, before answering the door, before catching even a glimpse of her reflection. The tumor that began as a small bump has grown into something that reshapes her entire left side, pulling her face downward with its weight. 5 different doctors delivered the same verdict: inoperable, too dangerous. The mass sits too close to critical nerves, they said. One wrong move, and she could lose all feeling, all movement on that side of her face forever. But one surgeon sees something the others missed. Her life is about to change forever. Sarah Martinez never imagined a tiny bump would steal her life. At 34, she was the teacher every parent requested for their child. Her classroom buzzed with energy. Her laugh echoed down school hallways, and her 2 young children, Emma and Carlos, aged 7 and 9, thought their mom could fix anything. The bump appeared on her left cheek 3 years ago. Barely noticeable at first, just a small raised area she discovered while washing her face one morning. The family doctor glanced at it during her annual checkup and shrugged. Probably a cyst. Keep an eye on it. But the bump had other plans. Within months, it doubled in size, then doubled again. What started as something she could cover with makeup became impossible to hide. The growth pushed outward, distorting the shape of her face, making her left eye appear smaller as the surrounding tissue swelled. Eating became a struggle. The tumor pressed against her jaw, making it difficult to chew properly. Speaking clearly required extra effort as the mass interfered with the natural movement of her mouth. Simple conversations left her exhausted. Emma noticed first. Children see everything with startling clarity. "Mommy, why is your face bumpy?" she asked one evening at dinner, her small finger pointing with innocent curiosity. Sarah's fork froze halfway to her mouth. How do you explain something you don't understand yourself? How do you answer questions that keep you awake at night? "It's just something that happens sometimes, sweetheart," Sarah managed, forcing a smile that felt crooked and wrong. But the questions kept coming. From her children, from students, from strangers on the street whose stares lingered too long. Each curious glance felt like a spotlight. Each whispered conversation she couldn't quite hear assumed the worst. David, her husband of 12 years, never wavered in his support. He told her she was beautiful every morning, kissed her goodnight every evening, and held her when the weight of stares and questions became too much to bear. But Sarah began pulling away anyway. First, she stopped attending family gatherings. Too many relatives asking the same questions, offering the same useless advice. Then she requested a leave of absence from teaching. Standing in front of a classroom full of curious 8-year-olds became unbearable when she could see them whispering about her appearance instead of focusing on their lessons. The isolation crept in slowly, like water finding cracks in a foundation. Sarah stopped going to the grocery store, letting David handle all the shopping. She avoided the school pickup line, asking neighbors to collect Emma and Carlos instead. Phone calls went unanswered. Invitations were declined. The woman who once filled rooms with laughter now spent days in her bedroom, curtains drawn, avoiding mirrors and reflections in windows. Depression settled over her like a heavy blanket, making even simple tasks feel impossible. At night, when David thought she was sleeping, Sarah would trace the outline of the tumor with her fingertips, feeling how it had changed the geography of her face. The mass continued growing, now visibly pulling her features downward, creating an asymmetry that no amount of makeup or clever hairstyling could disguise. Her reflection became her enemy. Bathroom mirrors were covered with towels. She dressed in the dark and avoided any surface that might show her what she'd become. The confident teacher who once stood before parent conferences and school board meetings now couldn't bear to see her own face. The children adapted with the resilience that only children possess. But Sarah caught them staring sometimes, confusion flickering across their young faces. They missed their mom's easy smile, her spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen, her willingness to play outside without worrying about who might see. 3 years of this. 3 years of shrinking smaller and smaller until Sarah Martinez, who once filled every room she entered, barely existed at all. But then, everything changed. The tumor now weighs over 2 pounds. Sarah can feel its mass pulling her face downward with each movement, a constant reminder of how her body has betrayed her. What began as a small inconvenience has become a medical emergency that threatens every basic function she once took for granted. Chewing food requires strategic planning. She cuts everything into tiny pieces, positioning each bite carefully on the right side of her mouth where she still has normal sensation and movement. Swallowing has become a conscious effort rather than an automatic reflex. The tumor presses against muscles and nerves that once worked seamlessly together. Sleep offers no escape. The mass makes it impossible to lie comfortably on her left side, and even sleeping on her back requires careful positioning of pillows to support the weight. She wakes multiple times each night, adjusting and readjusting, searching for a position that doesn't leave her neck aching by morning. David watches helplessly as his wife struggles with tasks that should be effortless. He sees her frustration when words come out slurred, when she has to repeat herself because the tumor affects her speech clarity. He notices how she's lost weight because eating has become such an ordeal. The parade of specialists continues, each consultation bringing the same devastating conclusion. Dr. Peterson at the University Hospital examines her scans and shakes his head. The tumor has wrapped itself around critical facial nerves like ivy around a tree trunk. Any attempt at removal would likely result in complete paralysis of the left side of your face, he explains, his voice gentle but firm. You'd lose all ability to blink that eye, smile, or control any expression on that side. The risks far outweigh any potential benefits. Dr. Chen at the Cancer Center agrees. The mass sits in what surgeons call the danger zone, too close to nerves that control essential functions. One slip of the scalpel could leave Sarah worse off than she is now. We could try radiation to slow the growth, Dr. Chen suggests. But at this stage with this type of tumor, the chances of significant reduction are minimal. The insurance battles begin. Sarah's policy covers standard treatments, but balks at anything labeled experimental or investigational. Letters arrive weekly, stamped with denials and rejections. Procedures that might help are deemed not medically necessary by reviewers who have never seen Sarah's face, never watched her struggle to drink a glass of water. David spends hours on the phone, arguing with insurance representatives, filing appeals, requesting reviews. Each denial feels like another door slamming shut, another path to healing blocked by bureaucracy and cost calculations. The weight of hopelessness settles deeper into Sarah's bones. She begins writing letters to Emma and Carlos, pouring out all the things she wants them to know, all the advice she wishes she could give them as they grow up. The letters pile up in her desk drawer, a collection of love and regret written by a mother who believes she's running out of time. I want you to remember me before this happened, she writes to Emma. Remember how we used to dance in the kitchen while making pancakes? Remember how I taught you to braid your hair and tie your shoes? Remember that I loved you more than all the stars in the sky. To Carlos, she writes about being brave and kind, about standing up for people who look different, about never giving up on his dreams even when the world seems impossible to navigate. David finds the letters one evening while looking for tax documents. He sits on their bedroom floor, reading his wife's final thoughts, and something fierce awakens in him. Anger at the doctors who won't try. fury at the insurance companies that value profits over people, determination to find someone, somewhere who sees possibilities instead of problems. He begins researching with the intensity of a man whose family depends on it. Late nights are spent hunched over his laptop, reading medical journals he barely understands, searching through case studies of similar tumors, following threads of hope across the internet. Medical terminology becomes his second language. He learns about facial nerve anatomy, about surgical techniques with names he practices pronouncing. He creates spreadsheets of specialists, tracking their experience with complex cases, their success rates, their willingness to attempt difficult procedures. The children sense the gravity of their situation without fully understanding it. Emma draws pictures of the family with their mom's face returned to normal. Carlos asks fewer questions but hugs Sarah more often, as if his small arms could hold all the pieces of her together. Sarah watches David's research efforts with a mixture of gratitude and heartbreak. She loves him for refusing to give up, but she's tired of hoping, only to have that hope crushed by another specialist's gentle rejection. Maybe we should accept that this is how things are, she tells him one night, after he spent hours reading about experimental treatments. Maybe fighting is just making everything harder. But David looks at his wife, really looks at her, and sees not the tumor that has stolen her confidence, but the woman who taught him to love completely, who gave him 2 beautiful children, who deserves every chance at healing that medical science can offer. "I'm not giving up," he says simply. "Not on you, not on us, not ever." That moment cracked something open, because sometimes love refuses to accept the unacceptable. And sometimes the most important discoveries happen at 2 a.m., when everyone else has stopped looking. At Johns Hopkins Hospital, Dr. Elena Rodriguez finishes her evening rounds as the sun sets over Baltimore. At 45, she carries herself with the quiet confidence of someone who has spent 2 decades repairing what others consider irreparable. Her specialty lies in the intersection of courage and precision, facial reconstruction surgeries that most surgeons won't even attempt. The walls of her office tell stories of transformation. Before and after photographs line the shelves, each pair representing a life reclaimed, a future restored. Patients with tumors, accident victims, children born with facial differences. Dr. Rodriguez has built her career on cases other doctors label impossible. Tonight, a new set of scans waits on her desk. Sarah Martinez's case, forwarded by a colleague who knows Rodriguez's reputation for taking on the challenges others refuse. The referral note is brief. Massive facial tumor, multiple surgical consults, all declined intervention. Thought you might want a review. Dr. Rodriguez slides the first scan onto her viewing screen and immediately understands why her colleagues hesitated. The tumor is enormous, a complex mass that has reshaped the entire left side of Sarah's face. But where others see insurmountable obstacles, Rodriguez sees a puzzle waiting to be solved. She studies the images with the intensity of an artist examining a masterpiece. The tumor's position is challenging, yes, but not impossible. It wraps around the facial nerve like a scarf, but Rodriguez has navigated similar anatomical mazes before. Her trained eye traces potential surgical pathways invisible to less specialized surgeons. The facial nerve is the 7th cranial nerve, responsible for all the muscles of facial expression. Damage it, and a patient loses the ability to smile, blink, or show emotion on that side of their face. It's why most surgeons approach these cases with extreme caution. The margin for error is essentially non-existent. But Rodriguez has developed techniques that others haven't mastered. She's pioneered approaches that combine traditional tumor removal with innovative nerve reconstruction. Her success rate with complex facial surgeries has earned her referrals from around the world. She pulls up Sarah's medical history, reading through the consultations and rejections. 5 different specialists, all highly qualified, all reaching the same conclusion. Too risky, too complex, too likely to leave the patient worse than before. Rodriguez understands their caution. These are good doctors making reasonable decisions based on traditional surgical approaches. But she sees possibilities they don't. Pathways through the anatomical labyrinth that her years of specialized training have revealed. At 9:30 p.m., she does something that surprises even her staff. She picks up her phone and dials Sarah's number directly. Sarah is helping Emma with homework when the phone rings. David glances at the caller ID, Johns Hopkins Hospital, and his heart skips. After months of rejections, he's learned to expect bad news from medical centers. Mrs. Martinez? This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez from Johns Hopkins. I've been reviewing your case and I'd like to discuss some options with you. Sarah's hand trembles as she takes the phone. Another doctor calling to explain why they can't help, she assumes. Another gentle rejection wrapped in medical terminology. I specialize in complex facial reconstructions, Dr. Rodriguez continues, her voice warm but professional. I believe your case is challenging, but not hopeless. I'd like you to come in for a consultation. The words don't register immediately. Sarah has trained herself not to hope, not to believe that anyone might see her situation differently. I don't understand, she manages. Every doctor has said it's inoperable. Every doctor has been looking at this from a traditional surgical perspective, Rodriguez explains. I use techniques that combine tumor removal with immediate nerve reconstruction. It's more complex, requires a larger surgical team, but it offers possibilities that conventional approaches don't. David moves closer, trying to hear both sides of the conversation. He watches his wife's face transform as Dr. Rodriguez explains her approach, not with false promises, but with genuine medical possibilities. The surgery would take approximately 14 hours, Rodriguez continues. We'd need a team of specialists, myself for the tumor removal and nerve work, a plastic surgeon for reconstruction, a neurologist to monitor nerve function throughout the procedure, and specialized anesthesiologists familiar with these lengthy operations. Sarah's mind struggles to process what she's hearing. After months of doors closing, someone is opening a window. I won't lie to you about the risks, Dr. Rodriguez says, her honesty both frightening and reassuring. Any surgery of this complexity carries significant dangers, but living with a tumor of this size also carries risks: continued growth, potential malignancy, progressive loss of function. She explains her technique in terms Sarah can understand. The tumor removal would be followed immediately by nerve grafting, using Sarah's own tissue to rebuild damaged pathways. Microscopic sutures would reconnect severed nerve fibers. The plastic surgery component would restore facial contours and symmetry. I've performed this type of reconstruction 43 times, Rodriguez says. 38 patients recovered full or near full facial function. 4 experienced partial paralysis but significant improvement. 1 case resulted in complete paralysis on the affected side. The statistics are sobering but hopeful. An 88% success rate for full recovery, compared to the 0% chance of improvement Sarah faces without surgery. Why are you willing to try when everyone else won't? Sarah asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Rodriguez pauses, choosing her words carefully. Because I became a surgeon to help people others can't help. Because I've developed skills specifically for cases like yours. And because everyone deserves a chance to reclaim their life. The consultation is scheduled for the following week. As Sarah hangs up the phone, She realizes something has shifted inside her chest. Not quite hope. She's not ready for that yet. But something lighter than the despair she's carried for months. David wraps his arms around his wife, feeling her body shake with emotions she can't name. For the first time in 3 years, the future holds possibilities beyond mere survival. That night, Sarah dreams of mirrors without fear, of meals eaten without struggle, of laughter that doesn't hurt to express. She dreams of being whole again. The consultation room at Johns Hopkins feels different from all the others Sarah has sat in over the past 3 years. Dr. Rodriguez spreads Sarah's scans across a large viewing screen, her movements precise and confident. Unlike previous doctors who spoke in cautious whispers, Rodriguez addresses the tumor directly, as if it's an opponent she's faced before. The mass has positioned itself in what we call the temporal region, she begins, pointing to the scan with a laser pointer. It's wrapped around your facial nerve like a vine around a tree branch. This is why traditional removal approaches won't work. They'd require cutting through the nerve to reach the tumor. Sarah touches her face instinctively, feeling the weight of the mass that has become her constant companion. David leans forward, his notebook ready to capture every detail of this conversation that might change everything. Traditional removal would leave you with complete facial paralysis on the left side, Dr. Rodriguez continues, her voice steady and clear. You'd lose the ability to close your left eye, smile, raise your eyebrow, or control any facial expression on that side. Your face would be permanently asymmetrical, and you'd need multiple follow-up surgeries just to restore basic protective functions like blinking. The brutal honesty is both terrifying and refreshing. Other doctors had mentioned paralysis as a possibility, but Rodriguez paints the full picture of what that would mean for Sarah's daily life. But there's another approach, she says, pulling up a different set of images. Nerve grafting allows us to remove the tumor while preserving and in some cases improving facial function. She explains the technique with the passion of someone who has dedicated her career to perfecting it. The surgery would begin with careful mapping of the facial nerve's exact pathway around the tumor. Using microscopic instruments, Rodriguez would dissect the tumor away from the nerve fiber by fiber, preserving as much of the original nerve structure as possible. Where the nerve has been damaged or compressed by the tumor, we'll remove those sections and replace them with nerve grafts harvested from your own body, she explains. Usually from the sural nerve in your leg. It's a sensory nerve that we can spare without affecting your leg function. The harvested nerve tissue would be cut into precise segments and used to bridge any gaps in the facial nerve. Under a powerful surgical microscope, Rodriguez would connect these grafts using sutures finer than human hair, essentially rebuilding Sarah's to control her facial muscles. The nerve grafting is just the beginning, Rodriguez continues. Once we've removed the tumor and restored the nerve pathways, Dr. Chen, our plastic surgeon, will begin reconstructing your facial contours. The plastic surgery component involves repositioning muscles, removing excess tissue created by the tumor's pressure, and restoring symmetry to Sarah's features. It's delicate work that requires understanding both the functional and aesthetic aspects of facial anatomy. The entire procedure will take approximately 14 hours, Rodriguez says, letting the magnitude sink in. You'll be under general anesthesia the entire time, but we'll use nerve monitoring throughout to ensure we're preserving function as we work. Sarah's mind reels at the complexity. 14 hours of surgery. Multiple specialists working in coordination, microscopic repairs to structures she can't even see. What are the risks? David asks, his voice tight with concern. Dr. Rodriguez doesn't soften her response. Any surgery of this duration carries risks of stroke, heart complications, or adverse reactions to anesthesia. The tumor removal itself risks bleeding, infection, or incomplete removal if we encounter unexpected anatomical variations. She pauses, ensuring they understand the full scope of potential complications. The nerve grafting carries its own risks. Even with perfect surgical technique, nerve regeneration is unpredictable. Some patients recover full function within 6 months. Others experience partial recovery that continues improving for up to 2 years. And there's always the possibility that the nerve grafts won't take, leaving you with permanent paralysis despite our best efforts. The statistics she shares are sobering. A 12% chance of complete facial paralysis, a 25% chance of partial paralysis with some functional improvement, and a 63% chance of full or near full recovery of facial function. There's also the risk of facial asymmetry, even with successful nerve grafting, Rodriguez continues. The reconstructed side may never match the unaffected side perfectly. You might have a slightly different smile, or one eyebrow might sit higher than the other. Sarah absorbs each risk, weighing them against her current reality. Living with the tumor means certain continued growth, progressive loss of function, and the possibility of malignant transformation. Surgery offers the chance of restoration, but with significant risks of making things worse. If we don't do the surgery, what happens? Sarah asks. The tumor will continue growing. Eventually, it will compress more nerves, possibly affecting your vision, hearing, or swallowing. The weight alone will continue pulling your facial features downward. And there's always the risk that what appears to be a benign tumor could develop malignant characteristics. The room falls silent as Sarah and David process the impossible choice before them. Live with a tumor that steals more of her life each day, or risk everything on a surgery that could restore her or leave her worse than before. I need to think about this, Sarah says finally. Of course, Dr. Rodriguez replies. This isn't a decision to make quickly. Take time to discuss it with your family. Research the procedure. Get second opinions if that helps you feel more confident. As they prepare to leave, Emma and Carlos, who have been waiting in the hallway, peek into the consultation room. Dr. Rodriguez notices them immediately and crouches down to their eye level. "Are you going to fix our mom?" Emma asks with the directness that only children possess. Dr. Rodriguez looks at the little girl seriously. "I'm going to try my very best to help her. But your mom is going to need to be very brave, and you two are going to need to be brave too." Carlos steps forward, his 9-year-old face solemn with understanding beyond his years. "Mom, you should do it. You should be brave." Emma nods vigorously. "We want our real mom back." That evening, sitting around their kitchen table, the family holds the most important meeting of their lives. Sarah looks at her children's faces, seeing hope and fear intermingled in their young eyes. David's hand finds hers across the table, steady and warm. The decision when it comes feels both terrifying and inevitable. Sometimes courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing hope despite the fear. The decision to proceed with surgery sets everything in motion with startling speed. Dr. Rodriguez schedules the operation for 3 weeks out, giving her team time to prepare for what will be one of the most complex procedures of the year. But first, Sarah must undergo a battery of tests that will determine if her body can withstand 14 hours under anesthesia. The pre-surgical planning begins immediately. Sarah returns to Johns Hopkins twice for detailed imaging sessions that map every millimeter of the tumor's position. Advanced MRI scans create 3-dimensional models of her facial anatomy, showing Dr. Rodriguez exactly where the tumor ends and healthy tissue begins. CT angiograms trace the blood vessels that feed the mass, helping the surgical team anticipate potential bleeding complications. In her laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez studies these images with the intensity of an architect reviewing building blueprints. She practices the surgery on 3D-printed models of Sarah's skull, rehearsing the most challenging aspects of the tumor removal. The models, created from Sarah's scans, allow Rodriguez to test different surgical approaches without risk to her patient. Every complex surgery is performed twice, Rodriguez explains to her residents during one of these practice sessions. Once in preparation and once in the operating room. The preparation determines the success of the actual procedure. Meanwhile, Sarah undergoes extensive medical testing to ensure she's healthy enough for the marathon surgery ahead. Blood work checks her clotting factors and organ function. Cardiac stress tests evaluate her heart's ability to handle prolonged anesthesia. Pulmonary function tests ensure her lungs can support the lengthy procedure. Each test brings its own anxiety. Sarah finds herself holding her breath as technicians draw vial after vial of blood, as if one abnormal result could snatch away this chance at healing. But her results come back encouraging. Despite the tumor's impact on her appearance, her underlying health remains strong. The financial reality of the surgery creates its own challenges. Even with insurance approval for the basic procedure, the specialized techniques and extended operating time push costs beyond what most families can manage. The hospital's financial counselor helps David navigate payment plans and medical loans, but the numbers are staggering. That's when something unexpected happens. Sarah's story, shared quietly among friends and family, begins spreading through their community like ripples on a pond. Emma's teacher mentions the situation to other parents. David's co-workers learn about the surgery during lunch conversations. Sarah's former students, now in high school, hear about their beloved teacher's struggle. A fundraising campaign begins organically. Bake sales at Emma and Carlos's school. A silent auction organized by David's office. Former students creating social media campaigns with photos of Sarah from her teaching days, when her smile lit up every classroom photo. The community response overwhelms the family. Neighbors they barely know drop off casseroles and offer to help with childcare. Parents from Emma's soccer team organize meal trains that will last through Sarah's recovery. The local teachers' union votes to donate funds from their emergency assistance program. We had no idea how many people cared, David tells his brother during one of many phone calls updating family members. Sarah always gave so much to others, teaching, volunteering, helping neighbors. Now everyone wants to give back to her. But perhaps the most difficult part of the preparation involves Sarah's own emotional journey. Dr. Rodriguez recommends that she record video messages for Emma and Carlos, not because she expects the worst, but because the psychological preparation helps patients face surgery with greater peace of mind. Sarah sits in their bedroom one afternoon, David's laptop open before her, struggling to find words for messages she prays her children will never need to watch. "Hi, sweetheart," she begins, addressing Emma first. "If you're watching this, it means something went wrong during my surgery, and I want you to know some important things." The words come haltingly at first, then pour out in a flood of love and guidance. She tells Emma about the importance of kindness, about standing up for people who look different, about pursuing her dreams even when they seem impossible. She shares memories of their time together. Bedtime stories, cooking lessons, quiet conversations about growing up. For Carlos, the message focuses on strength and compassion. She tells him about the day he was born, how his tiny hand gripped her finger with surprising strength. She talks about his gentle heart, his natural ability to comfort others, his bright curiosity about the world. "You both gave me reasons to fight when I wanted to give up," she says into the camera. "You showed me that love is stronger than fear, that hope is worth holding on to, even when everything seems impossible." Recording these messages breaks something open in Sarah, but it also provides unexpected relief. Speaking her deepest fears aloud somehow diminishes their power over her. The night before surgery arrives with startling suddenness. Sarah stands in her bathroom, looking in the mirror one final time. The tumor has been her companion for 3 years, reshaping not just her appearance but her entire sense of self. Tomorrow, one way or another, this chapter of her life will end. David finds her there, still staring at her reflection. "Any regrets?" he asks softly. Sarah considers the question seriously. The risks are real. The surgery could leave her worse than she is now. But living in fear has already cost her 3 years of hiding, 3 years of avoiding mirrors and missing moments with her children. "No regrets," she says finally. "Whatever happens tomorrow, at least we tried." They pray together that night, not for guaranteed success, but for courage, for skilled hands to guide the surgery, for peace regardless of the outcome. David holds her close, feeling the weight of the tumor between them, knowing that tomorrow will change everything. Dawn arrives with a mixture of terror and anticipation that takes Sarah's breath away. The operating room at Johns Hopkins buzzes with controlled energy at 5:30 a.m. Dr. Rodriguez arrives early, as she always does for complex cases, reviewing Sarah's scans one final time on the viewing monitors. The surgical suite has been specially configured for the 14-hour procedure ahead. Additional lighting, backup equipment, and monitoring systems that will track every aspect of Sarah's condition throughout the marathon operation. By 6 a.m., the surgical team assembles like a specialized orchestra, preparing for their most challenging performance. Dr. Rodriguez leads the group, her steady presence anchoring the room's energy. Dr. Chen, the plastic surgeon, reviews the reconstruction plans they've refined over weeks of preparation. Dr. Martinez, the neurologist, calibrates the nerve monitoring equipment that will provide real-time feedback about facial nerve function throughout the procedure. The anesthesiology team, led by Dr. Thompson, faces their own complex challenge. Keeping a patient safely unconscious for 14 hours requires constant vigilance and adjustment. They've prepared multiple backup plans for maintaining Sarah's vital signs during the lengthy operation. Sarah enters the preoperative area at 5:45 a.m., her face calm despite the magnitude of what lies ahead. David walks beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. They've said their goodbyes at home, not wanting the children to see the hospital's intimidating environment before such a major procedure. "Are you ready for this?" Dr. Rodriguez asks, her voice gentle but confident. Sarah nods, surprising herself with how steady she feels. The months of preparation, the community support, and the certainty that this represents her best chance at reclaiming her life have created a foundation of resolve she didn't know she possessed. The anesthesia takes effect gradually, pulling Sarah into unconsciousness as her surgical team makes final preparations. Dr. Rodriguez positions herself at the head of the operating table, her instruments arranged with military precision. Under the powerful surgical lights, Sarah's tumor appears even more formidable than in the scans, a mass that has commandeered an entire side of her face. At exactly 6:15 a.m., Dr. Rodriguez makes her first incision. The opening cut follows a carefully planned path that will provide maximum access to the tumor while minimizing visible scarring. Rodriguez works with the precision of someone who has performed this procedure dozens of times. But each case brings unique challenges that require real-time adaptation. As she deepens the incision, the true scope of the tumor becomes apparent. The mass extends further into the facial tissues than even the most detailed scans had revealed. What appeared to be a single large tumor is actually a complex network of growths that have infiltrated multiple tissue planes. It's larger than we anticipated, Dr. Rodriguez announces to her team, her voice steady despite the complication. We're looking at approximately 3 pounds of tumor tissue, not the 2 pounds estimated from imaging. The additional size means longer dissection time, more complex reconstruction, and greater risk of complications. But Rodriguez has encountered unexpected findings before. She adjusts her surgical plan without breaking rhythm, her years of experience guiding her through the anatomical maze. The tumor's relationship with the facial nerve proves even more complex than predicted. Instead of simply wrapping around the nerve like a scarf, the mass has infiltrated between individual nerve fibers, requiring microscopic dissection to separate healthy nerve tissue from tumor cells. 2 hours into the surgery, Rodriguez switches to the surgical microscope for the most delicate phase of the operation. Under 25 times magnification, she can see individual nerve fibers, some as thin as spider silk, that control specific aspects of facial movement. Preserving these fibers means the difference between Sarah's ability to smile naturally or losing that function forever. The dissection proceeds fiber by fiber, with Dr. Martinez monitoring nerve function through electrodes placed on Sarah's facial muscles. Each time Rodriguez touches a nerve during the dissection, the monitoring equipment provides immediate feedback about whether that nerve bundle remains intact and functional. Good signal strength on the upper branch, Dr. Martinez reports. Maintain current trajectory. The work is painstakingly slow. What might take minutes in a typical surgery stretches into hours when working at the microscopic level. Rodriguez's hands remain perfectly steady despite the extended precision work, a skill developed through years of similar procedures. 4 hours in, an unexpected complication arises. The tumor has eroded into a small blood vessel, creating bleeding that obscures the surgical field. Rodriguez calls for suction while identifying the source of the hemorrhage. Her quick thinking and steady hands control the bleeding within minutes. But the incident reminds everyone of the surgery's inherent dangers. Bleeding controlled, she announces, continuing with nerve dissection. The tumor removal continues methodically, with Rodriguez removing the mass in sections to avoid damage to surrounding structures. Each piece of removed tumor is immediately sent to pathology for analysis, confirming that the growth remains benign despite its aggressive local behavior. By hour 6, Rodriguez has successfully separated the main tumor mass from the facial nerve, but significant nerve damage is evident where the tumor compressed healthy tissue for years. This is where her innovative nerve grafting technique becomes crucial. The surgical team harvests nerve grafts from Sarah's left leg, removing a 6-inch section of the sural nerve that provides sensation to the outer edge of her foot. This nerve can be sacrificed without affecting Sarah's ability to walk or causing significant sensory loss, but it provides the raw material needed to rebuild her facial nerve function. Under the microscope, Rodriguez cuts the harvested nerve into precise segments, each measured to bridge specific gaps in Sarah's damaged facial nerve. The grafting process requires sutures finer than human hair, with each connection made under extreme magnification. First graft in place, Rodriguez reports as she completes the microscopic suturing. Good approximation of nerve endings. The nerve grafting continues for 2 more hours, with Rodriguez rebuilding the pathways that will allow Sarah to control her facial expressions. Each graft represents hope. The possibility that Sarah will smile, blink, and show emotion naturally once again. As the nerve reconstruction nears completion, Dr. Chen begins preparing for the plastic surgery phase. The tumor's removal has left significant tissue defects that require careful reconstruction to restore Sarah's facial contours and symmetry. 8 hours into the surgery, the team takes a brief break to assess their progress. The tumor removal is complete. The nerve grafting shows promising early signs, and the reconstruction phase is ready to begin. Despite the unexpected complications, the surgery is proceeding better than anyone dared hope. Dr. Rodriguez steps back from the operating table, flexing her hands and rolling her shoulders. 6 more hours of delicate work lie ahead, but the most dangerous phase is behind them. Sarah's facial nerve, rebuilt with grafts and microscopic sutures, holds the promise of restored function. "How are we doing?" Dr. Thompson asks, monitoring Sarah's vital signs. "Patient stable, nerve grafts looking good," Rodriguez replies. "Ready for reconstruction phase." The afternoon light filters through the operating room windows as the surgical team prepares for the next phase of Sarah's transformation. The tumor that ruled her life for 3 years is gone, replaced by hope, sewn together with threads too small to see. 8 hours in, complications arise with nerve connections. Dr. Rodriguez pauses at the surgical microscope, studying the delicate junction where she's attempting to connect a nerve graft to Sarah's original facial nerve. The connection isn't taking as expected. The electrical signals that should flow smoothly across the junction are weak and intermittent. Signal strength dropping on the lower branch, Dr. Martinez reports from his monitoring station. The nerve conduction readings that guide Rodriguez's work show concerning patterns. What should be strong, consistent electrical activity appears fragmented and unreliable. Rodriguez faces a decision that will determine the rest of Sarah's life. She can play it safe, accepting partial nerve function that would leave Sarah with limited facial movement, but avoid the risk of complete paralysis. Or she can attempt a more aggressive reconstruction that could restore full function, or leave Sarah worse than when they started. The operating room falls silent, except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Rodriguez has performed this surgery dozens of times, but each case presents unique challenges that textbooks can't anticipate. Sarah's nerve damage is more extensive than the scans revealed, requiring techniques that push the boundaries of surgical possibility. "Dr. Rodriguez," Dr. Chen asks quietly. The plastic surgeon has been waiting to begin his reconstruction work, but everything depends on the nerve repair Rodriguez completes first. Rodriguez studies the surgical field through her microscope, weighing options with the weight of Sarah's future in her hands. The conservative approach would guarantee some function. Sarah would be able to close her eye and show partial facial expression, but she'd never have a natural smile, never regain the full range of movement that makes faces truly expressive. The aggressive approach means removing more damaged nerve tissue and replacing it with additional grafts. It's technically possible, but the risks multiply with each additional connection. More graft sites mean more opportunities for failure, more chances that the rebuilt nerve pathways won't function properly. "I need 5 minutes, Rodriguez announces, stepping back from the operating table. The surgical team understands. Complex cases sometimes require moments of reflection, opportunities to reassess and choose the best path forward. Rodriguez walks to the viewing screen displaying Sarah's original scans, comparing them to what she's discovered during the actual surgery. She thinks about Sarah's children, asking if their mom will be fixed, about David's unwavering support through 3 years of medical disappointments, about Sarah's courage in choosing this surgery despite its risks. These aren't just medical considerations. They're human lives hanging in the balance of surgical decisions. "We're going for complete reconstruction," Rodriguez announces, returning to the microscope with renewed determination. The decision commits the team to at least 4 more hours of delicate work. Rodriguez begins removing additional damaged nerve tissue, cutting away sections that show no hope of recovery. Each cut represents a calculated risk, removing tissue that might have some function in favor of creating clean surfaces for new grafts. Dr. Martinez watches his monitors intently as Rodriguez works. Electrical activity ceasing in the upper branch, he reports. You're in dead tissue now. This is exactly what Rodriguez hoped to hear. Dead nerve tissue can't regenerate, but it can prevent healthy grafts from establishing proper connections. By removing all the damaged sections, she creates the best possible foundation for rebuilding Sarah's facial nerve network. The second round of nerve grafting begins with harvested tissue from Sarah's right leg. Rodriguez now has enough graft material to rebuild the entire lower portion of Sarah's facial nerve, the section that controls her smile, her voice to show joy and happiness naturally. Under the microscope, she begins the painstaking process of connecting multiple nerve grafts in series, creating a pathway for electrical signals to travel from Sarah's brain to the muscles of facial expression. Each connection requires perfect alignment of nerve fibers, sutures that are barely visible to the naked eye. First connection complete, Rodriguez reports. Testing signal transmission. Dr. Martinez activates his monitoring equipment, sending gentle electrical pulses through the reconstructed nerve pathway. The signals travel through Rodriguez's microsurgical connections, reaching the facial muscles that haven't moved naturally in months. Good signal strength, Martinez confirms. Clean transmission through the graft sites. The team works with renewed energy as the nerve reconstruction proves successful. Each completed connection brings Sarah closer to restored facial function, closer to the natural expressions that define human interaction and emotion. Dr. Chin begins his reconstruction work as Rodriguez completes the final nerve grafts. The plastic surgery component requires reshaping facial contours that were distorted by 3 years of tumor growth. Muscles that were stretched and displaced need to be repositioned. Skin that was pulled out of its natural configuration requires careful adjustment. Muscle tone looks good, Chen observes as he works to restore symmetry to Sarah's face. The nerve grafts are already showing signs of early function. The collaboration between Rodriguez and Chen represents surgical artistry at its highest level. Rodriguez's nerve work provides the foundation for facial movement, while Chen's reconstruction creates the framework for that movement to appear natural and symmetrical. As the afternoon stretches toward evening, the surgical team maintains their focus despite hours of intense concentration. Rodriguez completes the final microscopic sutures on Sarah's rebuilt facial nerve system. Chen finishes the muscle repositioning that will allow Sarah's face to move symmetrically once the nerves heal. The final hours are spent ensuring that every connection is secure, every reconstruction element properly positioned. Rodriguez tests each nerve graft one final time, confirming that electrical signals flow cleanly through the rebuilt pathways. All grafts showing excellent conductivity, Dr. Martinez reports. This is some of the best nerve work I've monitored. Dr. Chen steps back from his reconstruction work, studying Sarah's face with the critical eye of an artist reviewing a masterpiece. The swelling from surgery obscures the final results, but the underlying structure shows promise of remarkable restoration. As the sun sets outside the hospital windows, Rodriguez places the last sutures in Sarah's skin. The incisions are closed with the same precision that marked every aspect of the surgery, creating the minimal scarring possible for such an extensive procedure. Surgery complete, Rodriguez announces at 8:47 p.m., 14 hours and 32 minutes. Sarah is wheeled to recovery, her face wrapped in protective bandages that hide the transformation beneath. The tumor that dominated her life for 3 years is gone, replaced by hope, sewn together with microscopic precision. The surgical team disperses quietly, each member carrying the satisfaction of work performed at the highest level of medical skill. But the real test lies ahead, in the days and weeks when Sarah's rebuilt nerves will either heal properly or fail to function as intended. Dr. Rodriguez makes notes in Sarah's chart, documenting every aspect of the complex procedure. Tomorrow will bring the first signs of whether their 14 hours of work has given Sarah back her life. The first 48 hours after surgery are critical for nerve function recovery. Sarah drifts in and out of consciousness in the intensive care unit, her face wrapped in protective bandages that hide the transformation beneath. The medications keep her comfortable, but they also create a dreamlike state where reality blurs with hope and fear. David maintains his bedside vigil, leaving only when nurses insist he eat or rest. He studies every monitor, watches every rise and fall of Sarah's chest, searches for signs that the marathon surgery has succeeded. The ICU becomes his world, a place of beeping machines and whispered conversations between medical staff. Emma and Carlos aren't allowed in the intensive care unit, but they've set up camp in the family waiting room. Emma draws pictures of their family with their mom's face returned to normal, her crayons creating the reality she desperately wants to see. Carlos reads quietly, occasionally looking up to ask David when they can see their mom. Soon, David tells them, though he doesn't know when that will be true. The bandages obscure everything, and the swelling from 14 hours of surgery makes it impossible to assess the results. Dr. Rodriguez checks on Sarah hourly during those first critical days, looking for signs of nerve damage that might indicate surgical failure. She examines Sarah's eyes for proper blinking reflexes, tests basic responses that would reveal whether the microscopic nerve connections are beginning to function. The swelling is normal for this type of procedure, she explains to David during one of her visits, but it makes it difficult to assess nerve function accurately. We won't know the full results until the inflammation subsides. On the second day, Sarah becomes more alert, though the pain medication keeps her groggy and disoriented. She tries to speak, but the swelling affects her speech, making words come out slurred and difficult to understand. The children, she manages to whisper, her voice barely audible. They're here, David assures her. They've been waiting to see you. When Emma and Carlos are finally allowed brief visits, they approach their mother's bed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The bandages covering most of Sarah's face make her look like a different person. But her eyes, the eyes they've missed seeing clearly for months, are visible and alert. "Hi, Mom," Emma says softly, taking Sarah's hand carefully. "We missed you." By name, Carlos hangs back initially, overwhelmed by the medical equipment and his mother's altered appearance. But when Sarah squeezes Emma's hand and tries to smile, even though the bandages hide any expression, he moves closer. "Did it work?" he asks, with the directness that only children possess. Sarah can't answer yet, but Dr. Rodriguez enters the room at that moment, her presence bringing both authority and reassurance. "We won't know for several more days," she tells the children honestly. "Your mom's face needs time to heal before we can see how well the surgery worked." But everything went very well during the operation. The waiting becomes a family effort. David coordinates with his office to work remotely from the hospital. Emma's teacher sends homework assignments that she completes in the family lounge. Carlos discovers the hospital's small library and reads book after book, finding escape in stories while his mother heals. By the third day, the swelling begins to subside noticeably. Dr. Rodriguez arrives for her morning check with barely contained anticipation. The moment she's been working toward, the first real assessment of the surgery's success, has arrived. "Sarah, I'm going to remove some of the bandages today," she explains. "We'll be able to see how the reconstruction looks and test some basic nerve functions." David holds Sarah's hand as Dr. Rodriguez carefully unwraps the protective gauze. Layer by layer, Sarah's face emerges from the bandages. The surgical incisions are healing cleanly. The swelling has reduced enough to reveal facial contours, and most importantly, the massive tumor that dominated the left side of her face is completely gone. But the real test comes with nerve function. Dr. Rodriguez asks Sarah to attempt small facial movements, blinking, raising her eyebrows, trying to smile. Sarah concentrates intensely, sending mental commands to facial muscles that haven't responded properly in months. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her left eye begins to close when she blinks. The movement is weak and incomplete, but it's movement nonetheless. "Excellent," Dr. Rodriguez says, unable to hide her satisfaction. The nerve grafts are beginning to function. Over the following days, Sarah's facial function continues to improve incrementally. The ability to blink becomes stronger and more coordinated. Small movements around her mouth suggest that the smile muscles are beginning to respond to the rebuilt nerve pathways. The first bandage removal that allows Sarah to see her reflection becomes a moment of profound transformation. David brings a small mirror to her bedside, holding it steady as Sarah prepares to see herself for the first time, without the tumor that has defined her appearance for 3 years. The face looking back at her is swollen and marked by surgical incisions, but it's symmetrical. The massive growth that pulled her features downward is gone, replaced by natural facial contours that she hasn't seen since before the tumor began growing. Sarah's reflection brings tears of joy that she can finally shed freely. For 3 years, crying meant dealing with the tumor's interference with normal facial expressions. Now, tears flow naturally down both sides of her face, a simple human response that feels miraculous after so long. "I look like me again," she whispers, her voice filled with wonder. The ability to smile returns gradually over the following days, like a flower opening to sunlight. At first, just a slight upturn at the corner of her mouth, then a broader expression that engages muscles on both sides of her face. Finally, a genuine smile that reaches her eyes and transforms her entire appearance. David witnesses this progression with amazement, watching his wife reclaim expressions he'd almost forgotten she possessed. The children see their mother's face returning to the version they remembered from before the tumor changed everything. Physical therapy begins while Sarah is still in the hospital, with specialists helping retrain facial muscles that have been affected by years of tumor pressure. The exercises seem simple, making exaggerated facial expressions, practicing coordinated movements, but they represent the rebuilding of Sarah's books to communicate emotion through her face. "Smile as wide as you can," the physical therapist instructs. "Now raise your eyebrows. Close your eyes tightly." Each exercise strengthens the connection between Sarah's rebuilt nerves and the muscles they control. The progress is remarkable, exceeding even Dr. Rodriguez's optimistic projections for recovery. By the end of her hospital stay, Sarah can smile naturally, blink normally, and show the full range of facial expressions that make human interaction possible. The tumor that stole 3 years of her life is gone, replaced by a face that looks not just healed, but genuinely happy. As they prepare to leave the hospital, Sarah takes one final look in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back is recognizable, not just as the person she was before the tumor, but as someone who has survived something extraordinary and emerged stronger. 6 months later, Sarah Martinez walks through the familiar hallways of Lincoln Elementary School with a confidence she hasn't felt in years. The morning sun streams through the classroom windows as she arranges materials for her first day back to teaching. Her reflection in the window glass shows a face that's not just healed, but genuinely at peace. The children in her new 4th grade class don't stare. They don't whisper or point or ask uncomfortable questions. To them, she's simply Mrs. Martinez, their teacher who smiles easily and laughs often. The natural expressions that Dr. Rodriguez's surgery restored have become second nature again, as if the 3 years of hiding never happened. "Good morning, everyone. Sarah says as her students settle into their seats. Her voice carries clearly across the room, no longer affected by the tumor's interference. Who can tell me what they did over summer vacation? Hands shoot up eagerly. Sarah calls on students with the same enthusiasm she once brought to teaching, before the tumor stole her confidence along with her appearance. The joy of connecting with young minds floods back, reminding her why she became an educator in the first place. During lunch break, Sarah stands before the bathroom mirror in the teacher's lounge, the same type of mirror she avoided for 3 years. The face looking back shows faint surgical scars that have faded to thin lines, barely visible unless someone knows where to look. Her smile is natural and symmetrical, her expressions animated and genuine. The transformation goes beyond physical healing. Sarah engages confidently with the world again, making eye contact during conversations, participating in parent-teacher conferences without self-consciousness, attending school events where she once would have hidden at home. Her story has begun reaching other patients facing similar diagnoses. Dr. Rodriguez connects Sarah with newly diagnosed patients who need to hear that hope exists beyond the initial devastating consultations. Sarah speaks at medical conferences, sharing her experience not as a victim of disease, but as someone who refused to let fear make her final decisions. "I spent 3 years believing that my situation was hopeless," she tells audiences of doctors and patients. 5 different specialists told me surgery was impossible. But sometimes, impossible just means we haven't found the right person to make it possible yet. Her advocacy work extends beyond speaking engagements. Sarah volunteers with organizations that support patients with facial differences, helping others navigate the emotional challenges that accompany visible medical conditions. She understands the isolation, the self-consciousness, the way society's reactions can become more devastating than the medical condition itself. The relationship between Sarah and Dr. Rodriguez has evolved into a lasting friendship built on mutual respect and shared experience. Rodriguez often calls Sarah when facing particularly challenging cases, not for medical advice, but for perspective on what patients truly need during their darkest moments. "You remind me why I became a surgeon," Rodriguez tells Sarah during one of their periodic checkups. "Not just to remove tumors or reconstruct faces, but to give people their lives back." The Martinez family has grown stronger through their shared crisis. David watched his wife display courage he didn't know she possessed, while Sarah witnessed his unwavering commitment to finding solutions when others gave up. Emma and Carlos learned that their mother's strength goes far deeper than appearance, that love persists through the most challenging circumstances. Family dinners have returned to their former joy. Sarah eats without struggle, speaks without effort, laughs without self-consciousness. The children share stories from school while their parents listen with the appreciation of people who know how precious these ordinary moments truly are. The community that rallied around Sarah's surgery continues to celebrate her recovery. Former students, now in high school, stop her in grocery stores to tell her how much her return to teaching means to them. Parents who organized fundraisers express gratitude for seeing their efforts result in such complete restoration. Sarah's story inspires other patients to seek treatment they might otherwise avoid. Letters arrive from people across the country who read about her case and found the courage to pursue their own complex surgeries. Each letter reinforces her belief that sharing difficult experiences can create hope for others facing similar challenges. The physical therapy that began in the hospital has evolved into a maintenance routine that keeps Sarah's facial muscles strong and coordinated. The exercises that once seemed monumental now take just minutes each morning, a small investment in preserving the function that surgery restored. Sarah often thinks about the woman who covered her face with scarves, who avoided mirrors and withdrew from the world she loved. That person feels like someone from a different lifetime, connected to her present self only by the appreciation for healing that comes from experiencing profound loss. The tumor that ruled her life for 3 years exists now only in medical photographs and case studies. In its place stands a woman who teaches children, advocates for patients, and lives each day with the gratitude of someone who knows how quickly everything can change, and how completely it can be restored when hope meets skill and courage. Sometimes hope arrives wearing scrubs and carrying steady hands, but it also lives in the hearts of people who refuse to accept that impossible means forever. Sarah now helps other patients facing similar diagnoses, her voice steady and encouraging during support group meetings at Johns Hopkins. She sits across from newly diagnosed patients whose faces carry the same fear and desperation she once knew intimately. Her presence alone offers proof that seemingly impossible situations can transform into stories of complete healing. The partnership between her courage and Dr. Rodriguez's skill created something that transcends medical terminology or surgical statistics. It became a demonstration of what happens when hope refuses to surrender, when expertise meets determination, when a patient's trust aligns with a surgeon's vision of possibility. Dr. Rodriguez continues pioneering techniques that push the boundaries of facial reconstruction surgery. Sarah's case has become a teaching model, studied by medical students and residents who learned that some of medicine's greatest victories come from taking calculated risks on patients others have written off as untreatable. The letters keep coming from patients around the world who read about Sarah's transformation. Each envelope contains someone else's story of being told their condition is inoperable, their situation hopeless. Sarah responds to every single letter, sharing not false promises, but genuine hope backed by medical reality. Emma and Carlos, now older and wiser, understand that their mother's journey taught them lessons about resilience that will serve them throughout their lives. They learned that love persists through the most challenging circumstances, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. David keeps a photo on his desk from Sarah's first day back to teaching, her natural smile radiant with the joy of someone who has reclaimed not just her appearance, but her entire sense of self. If you believe in these healing stories, subscribe for more. Sometimes hope arrives wearing scrubs and carrying steady hands.